Right, hey guys, and welcome back to the Men of Yorkshire, and welcome back to the love-hate relationship series on this channel. This one isn't really so much love and hate, but it's the best and worst of things. And of course, this time around we're talking about Formula One. The F1 season has come to a close just a couple of weekends ago. Abu Dhabi was the final race, and now I get to assess who my top 5 best drivers were this season. Of course, the top 5 worst as well. I have assessed, calculated, and come to some decisions with that. But you'll have to stay tuned for that one because that'll be coming later in the week. But this episode, of course, is all about my top 5 best drivers this season on the current Formula One grid. And yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one because although this season has been really poor for driving standards overall, there is quite a few drivers that did excel this season. And there were certainly more than 5 that I would have liked to have put in the top 5. But of course, you know, there's about 8 or 9 drivers that I'd like to squeeze into this this top 5. So, you know, similarly with the top 5 worst, I had to think about, well, Christ, which 5 actually deserve to be in that ranking. But of course, the ones that don't make it quite into the top 5, I will give a little bit of an honourable mentions to at the end. So of course, we'll kick things off as always with the P5 position. We're going to go from 5 to 1, 1 being the best of course in the current grid. And yeah, in 5th place I have gone for Lando Norris, and it had to be, didn't it? It must be said. I did this video back at the summer break, of course, so we'd had the first half of the season, and Lando Norris featured nowhere at all. The McLaren car having flashes of brilliance but not quite being there or thereabouts. It spent the first half of the season firmly at the back and struggling just to pick up points here and there, didn't it? Only the chaotic Australia race netted any sort of decent result up until that summer break. We did see, of course, the flashes of brilliance at Austria come through as well. But Lando Norris was very anonymous in the first half of the season. But wow, oh wow, after that summer break, with more updates on that McLaren, once again, did we see some amazing results from Lando. He's driven so well this season. It really has. Of course, it really does go to show the car, when it's working well, Lando Norris can deliver the goods. Picking up countless podiums. Was it 7 this season by him? He scored the most points in his Formula One history in a single season and picked up the most podiums as well, of course. Hoodles and oodles of P2 finishers and a couple of P3s as well. He did so well, didn't he? So yeah, from not even being really mentioned at all just 6 months ago, effectively, at the summer break, this time around he really has delivered the goods. And the second half of the season has all been about McLaren and them climbing themselves up the order. From last in the constructors' standings all the way up to P4, and Lando Norris has played a heavy part in that. The reason why he only appears P5 and not ahead of some of the others is because there were still mistakes coming in through the season, weren't they? Towards the end of the season he sort of tailed off with his impressive performances and started making mistakes. Not getting a qualifying lap time in at Mexico was a big disadvantage for him. And then on the restart there as well, after Kevin Magnussen's red flag, of course, after he'd made up loads of positions, lost them all with a poor restart as well. So Mexico was a frustrating one. Las Vegas was a frustrating race as well, of course, dropping it in the early stages of the race where anything could have happened that race with the low grip and of course being a new circuit to Formula One as well. He'd have very much been in a fight for a podium there as well. So, yeah, still an odd mistake here and there creeping in for Lando this season. And if he'd ironed those out completely, then it certainly would have been inside the top 3 of the top 5. So, he's done fantastically well to recover McLaren's season, as have McLaren to recover their own season as well. He's done a great job. He really has. But there's been moments where he's been shown up by his less experienced teammate, of course, the rookie Oscar Piastri, picking up the overall sprint win at Qatar while Norris had to settle to finish behind him. You know, so there's little elements of that as well. But I think P5 overall for Lando is a fantastic recovery, considering just a few months ago he wasn't even mentioned in who I thought was where. So it really does show you this order could shuffle up somewhat compared to what I analysed just a few months ago. But yeah, Lando Norris, P5 for me. He's had some fantastic performances. I don't want to put him down at all. He really deserves to be in this list. And yeah, for me personally, I think P5 is fair overall. In 4th place on this list, I have placed Lewis Hamilton. So I think in the mid-term reports I put in P3. So he just drops a little bit to P4, which I know some people will think, That's a bit bizarre, you know, because he has had a really good second half of the season as well, hasn't he? Let's not forget, you know, there's been some magic drives. The US Grand Prix, of course, fair enough, it didn't count for any points in the end due to the floor infringement and getting chucked out, but that's not his fault. That's a technical error with the team. But that was a cracking drive. You know, we've seen amazing drives from him in the second half this season, and I don't want to discredit him in any way by dropping him a position. I just think the driver that I've put in third has really delivered in the second half, so I want to, you know, give them a fair shout. But Lewis Hamilton this season, finishing third overall in the drivers' standings, which is effectively best of the rest compared to the Red Bulls. The fact that he was able to keep that fight with Sergio Perez for that second place in the Drivers' Championship really has to be commended as well for Lewis Hamilton. It really, really does, because he has done a stunning job. This season has just been a really solid job for him. He is the one that has effectively carried Mercedes. George Russell's had his own issues this year, scoring, well, dramatically less than he did the year previous, of course. But Lewis Hamilton has been the one there to pick up the pieces. He's picked up the podiums for the team, the majority of them anyway, and throughout most of the season has been well in advance ahead of George Russell, and also really delivering some solid results and times where you didn't expect the Mercedes to be quite so good. He's been up there fighting on the podium positions. So, yeah, you know, there has been an odd mistake here and there as well, of course. There's been the odd anonymous race at Brazil where both Mercedes just totally struggled, which was a complete bafflement to everyone, I think, considering how good they were the previous year. But yeah, you know, there's been the odd mistake here, there's been the odd little whinge and moan, which I still don't fully agree with. You know what I'm like for moaning, but I don't think this really deserves to drop him a place. I just think the other driver that I put in third really does deserve to be here based on the second half of the season he's had. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton overall has been fantastic this season. He's been a pleasure to watch. He's really carrying the Mercedes team forward. I hope they can make steps forward next year as well, because this year the car sent more overall solid but didn't really do much, you know. Yeah, it was a good weekend overall and a good season overall by Hamilton. Just the odd mistake here and there creeping in. Abu Dhabi, the last race of the season, of course, as well, was a little bit of a lonely race for him. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton, a fantastic job this season. Really does deserve a space in the top 5 for me personally. Has been a pleasure to watch, and yeah, that's why I think he deserves 4th overall. So yeah, P4 to Lewis Hamilton. And in third place, I have gone for okay, sacre bleu, shalala. Charles Leclerc, of course, in the Ferrari. Again, I don't think he was a driver that was mentioned just a few months previous in my mid-season report. But again, this second half of the season for Charles has been incredible, hasn't it? A multitude of front row lockouts, pole positions, fighting with the Red Bulls. He has delivered so well this second half of the season. The first half of the season, okay, it was a little bit hit and miss. There was mistakes such as qualifying at Miami. There was team errors, of course, with strategy. What's new there? It's Ferrari. But throughout the most part of this second half, he has been sublime in everything he has turned his eye to. He's been great at the circuits. He's been great at the tracks. He's delivered some fantastic results. The qualifying pace has been brilliant. You can't deny that, taking quite a few pole positions in this second half of the season, if not a front row lockout. And overall, just been really good. Okay, in the race itself, the Ferrari doesn't have the overall pace to really get himself ahead of Max Verstappen. But look at Las Vegas. Came so close to winning that bloody thing. And I think had Sainz been allowed to start alongside him for a front row lockout, I think that could have been Charles's win there, because I think Sainz would have, of course, held Max Verstappen up. So, you know, all swings and roundabouts this season. I think it's unlucky that Charles didn't scrape a win this season. Despite how dominant the Red Bull was, Charles in this second half really gave it his all. And if they can come out the blocks kicking at the start of next season like they ended this season, then Charles Leclerc, if he can just iron out those few mistakes and sloppy errors here and there, and, you know, I think he's got chance. I don't think next year they'll be beating Red Bull by any stretch of the imagination, but just close the gap and then close the gap again, and then I think we can start to see the results. He's been so unlucky this second half of the season. Brazil, of course, a front row lockout there, and then crashes on the formation lap because his hydraulics have failed. That just sums up Charles's season this year. So yeah, the whole ending of where he finished in the championship doesn't tell the true picture. But I think overall, P3 here is a really, really good result. And of course, he finished third in the Crawl Room standings as well, of course. So he dramatically rose from mid-pack there as well. So the second half of the season has really turned the fortune around for some drivers, Charles Leclerc included. And he's been a pleasure to watch. He really, really has, it must be said. He really is pushing that Ferrari team forwards. Believed he's extended his contract now till the end of 2029, but I think that's a rumour at the moment as opposed to actually officially confirmed. But if he has, then that'll be interesting to see how that goes, because of course, yeah, he's at Ferrari, yeah, he'll be earning the mega bucks, but could Ferrari finally get there and deliver him a championship winning car? We came close in 2022, of course, but Charles was making his own errors there. This season, they've ended the season quite strongly. But I hope they can carry that momentum into next year. If it is going to be a title challenge, I think it's going to have to be the new regulations and them getting it right, personally. But, if it's there for the long haul, you never know. So, yeah, Charles Leclerc for me this season. Again, been a great driver to watch. Okay, a bit of an anonymous and frustrating start to the year, it must be said. But once he ironed out his mistakes, he has been impeccable. Okay, team errors have gone wrong. He's had mechanical issues as well. Not his fault at all, but he has always put that car in the best position possible, and he's done a fantastic job with it. So congratulations, Charles Leclerc, on P3 on this list of my top 5 best drivers this season. In second place, we come to Fernando Alonso. It had to be, didn't it? He was leading the rankings going into the midsummer break, it must be said. But unfortunately, Aston Martin, when they came back after the summer break, unfortunately got a little bit lost with the car, didn't they? It's a shame to say that, but they just did. They tried updates with the car that didn't quite work out, and it meant that instead of fighting for the podiums, there was fighting for P7s and P8s. Sometimes a top 5 would be a great result. But yeah, for me overall, Alonso this season has been one that has blown me away completely, it must be said. Okay, the car's been decent as well, but I weren't expecting Fernando Alonso to be extracting this much out of a season and out of a car. I thought it was towards the tail end of his career, taking a Kimi Raikkonen stance of just picking up a big fat checkbook and sorting out his pension pot. But he wasn't. He's still as hungry and still as determined like he was when he joined the sport 20 years ago. Yeah, he has really, really delivered the goods. Yeah, of course, the mid-season was a little bit difficult for him in that second half. As mentioned, only fighting and squabbling for just a few points. But again, he rarely made errors. He just delivered what he could with the car he was given. It was a shame that Aston Martin lost the way with the setup. Only a couple of errors, really, weren't there, this season, of course. The Spa sprint race was one where he binned it into the gravel, unfortunately, but he'd already had a compromise qualifying in that due to his teammate crashing, so I don't think points would have been possible anyway, but a shame for him to not pick up another finish there. And yeah, there was the Qatar spin, wasn't there, in the race, and still came home to finish 6th, so maybe lost out on a couple of places there. But yeah, he's not done a bad job at all, has he? And you can iron out a couple of mistakes and you can forgive a couple of mistakes, because the amount of legwork he's put in this season has been absolutely sublime. We saw the last lap overtake on Sergio Perez at Brazil, of course, which was exciting, and it shows that he's still got a hunger and a passion for the sport. So yeah, second place for me overall in this standings. Yeah, he deserved it. Absolutely deserved it. He's done so well this season. He's done impeccably well. And yeah, for me, he has been the driver that has surprised me the most, it must be said. Because Aston Martin, yeah, they look like they're improving at the end of last year in 2022, but they certainly didn't look like they were going to come out the blocks and score podiums like they did relentlessly in the first half of the year. And in the second half of the year, slumped away, but once they found the feet again and went back to what they knew, back on the podiums again. So bravo, Fernando, for a fantastic year and being my biggest surprise of the season, it must be said. He is second on this list. And then in first place, we have, of course, Max Verstappen. Won everything this season, hasn't he? He's even won the Crawl Room Championship as well. Can you believe it? The first ever driver to win the overall Formula 1 Standings Championship and win the Crawl Room as well. But yeah, such has Max Verstappen's dominance been this season. Of course, the Red Bull was one of the best. It was the best car in Formula 1 this season, no doubt about that. But just the way he has driven, just impeccable. Absolutely impeccable. You can have the fastest car on the grid, but if you're mistake prone, error prone, crash prone, just like Sergio Perez was, then you're not going to win championships, are you? But he has driven superbly. Yeah, over the one lap pace, as mentioned, you know, Ferrari were really chomping at the bit of him in qualifying towards the end of this season. Ferrari's getting more pole positions in the last few races than Red Bull themselves, but where it mattered in the race, they had overall race place. They were able to look after the tyres. With any fuel load, they could go long, they could go short, they could do whatever they wanted really, and overall they knew that they were going to win. Led over 1,000 laps this year in comparison to his teammate, which managed to do 160, was it? It wasn't many, was it? You know, it just shows the level of dominance that Max has had this year, it really does. And yeah, you know, there's been odd times where I've heavily criticised him. The most part, of course, was Singapore. He just threw his toys out the pram because the car wasn't going to be a pole sitter. But I think he could have delivered a lot more from it than he did with just that lowly P11 grid spot or whatever it was. And then a compromised strategy because of the timing of the safety car meant he could only get P5. But the car had the pace there, you know. I think had a bit more luck gone his way and he'd have actually shut the fuck up moaning and carried on with the racing and carried on with qualifying rather than just being a moaning bitch and focused his attentions on driving. He could have got into Q3 and could have still been a podium finisher in Singapore. That's just my observations on that. But yeah, you know, we've seen these traits of still these arrogance of him that I'm not a fan of, but again, you know, I think in some respects he's earned the right to be arrogant, hasn't he? He has been the most dominant driver this season, and despite the fact that I've fallen out with him a couple of times this year with his attitude towards his team, towards his race engineer, and towards his teammate at times as well, of course, mainly his dad, but yeah, you know, there's of course been moments there where I think, just chill the fuck out, Max, you know, but I'm still putting him in first place because it has been an absolute spectacle to watch this year. And yeah, we've had 90% of the races that have been really dull this year due to the dominance of Red Bull. But I think when we look back at it in 5-10 years' time, we're going to go, we witnessed that. You know, we witnessed this moment and this momentous occasion where this guy, this young kid with Red Bull, broke all these records that no one ever thought were going to be broken. You know, the win record, averages and tallies and the amount of laps led. It's just unbelievable. So yeah, massive congratulations to Max Verstappen this year on what has been an impeccable performance. And if he'd have kept his gob short, he'd have probably wrapped up the Cruel Room Championship a lot later than the last race. So, you know, he's really delivered the goods this year. He really has. And if he could just tame his mouth down a little bit, and understandably at times he'll have criticism because he wants perfection, which is what every driver does have. And he wants that, of course, to break more records and to win more races and win more championships. But you do it behind closed doors and you do it respectfully. You don't do it publicly in interviews, and you don't do it publicly over the radio as well, the team radio, of course. You know, he's just delivered fantastic this year, and it's just a shame that his mouth has run away with him at times, and he said immature things, and you just think, fucking hell, Max, you know. But that comes from a place of passion, and I understand that. But if he could just tame it a little bit, then he'd be a really nice all-round guy, to be honest, wouldn't he? And no one could blame him for that. So yeah, congratulations, Max Verstappen. You are first on this list. An absolutely fantastic season, a dominant season, and yeah, although the racing overall has been, oh God, Max again, you know, this season has been one that we will look back on and reflect and go, wow, we got to see the sheer dominance. So yeah, congratulations, Max Verstappen, first on this list. And before we end the video, of course, I would just like to give a few honourable mentions. There were about 8 or 9 drivers here that I felt had to squeeze into 5, and we just couldn't quite do it, could we? We just couldn't quite manage it. So, of course, the first one on this list would be Oscar Piastri. A fantastic rookie season, it must be said. The first driver since Lewis Hamilton to score multiple podiums in a rookie season, and overall has delivered great results. As mentioned when I was speaking about Lando Norris there, it was Oscar Piastri that took the sprint victory at Qatar and not his more experienced teammate. So, in theory, Oscar Piastri already has a win, even though they don't count fully as a win in the stats. You know, he's already got that one more victory over his more experienced teammate. To pick up multiple podiums, to deliver some fantastic results and racecraft, some great qualifying performances as well. He has been a really, really good driver this year. And okay, yeah, getting top rookie against the likes of Logan Sargent, Nick De Vries, who got binned off after just 10 rounds, and Liam Lawson, who only had a few rounds at circuits he didn't know, in a car he was unfamiliar with. Yeah, he was going to get top rookie all day long, but did anyone expect him to do quite so well? Well, when everyone always says that second seat in that McLaren Williams tricky because Ricciardo didn't do so well. I think he silenced the critics there, and he really has delivered the goods for McLaren this season, hasn't he? He hasn't even really put a wheel wrong this season either, to be fair. There's been a couple of races where he's overheated his tyres here and there, just with inexperienced, bringing him up to temperature too soon in the race, and then obviously losing the tyre life towards the end of the stint and losing places. But for the most part, he has been impeccable, and for a rookie, he has done really, really well. I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on next year, but yeah, Oscar Piastri is one to watch for me as well next year. He's done really well. The next driver on this list, of course, is Yuki Tsunoda. What a fantastic season he's had. Really the driver that sort of carried the AlphaTauri team to that P8 in the Constructors and almost got Williams at the end there. Yuki Tsunoda has done fantastic this season. You could throw anything at him. You've thrown De Vries at him. You've thrown Liam Lawson at him. You've thrown Daniel Ricciardo at him. And he's just come out and just delivered the goods. He has delivered the result for AlphaTauri. Yeah, there's been an odd incident here and there. Mexico was the big one where points were possible, and he threw it away with a silly move around the outside of Piastri. But for the most part, he has delivered the goods and really shown that he can keep his head above water no matter who his teammate is, and has done a fantastic job. So yeah, congratulations Yuki Tsunoda. A great season, and certainly deserved a mention here because I think he's done ever so well. Another honourable mention for me as well, of course, has to be Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas. Doing some great jobs there, getting that car into Q3 quite a few times this season, into Q2 more often than not, and for the most part delivering most points for the Haas team as well. Despite them still finishing last in the championship, they can be thankful for Nico Hülkenberg for what he's done this season. He'd had a bit of a lonely start at the start of the year, but then got himself together and really delivered well in that mid part of the season, and tried to cling on for points as best he could at Mexico, just didn't quite work out. But yeah, for the most part, he has delivered the goods in that Haas car, really over-delivered compared to what his teammate has done as well. And it'll be interesting to see how he gets on next year as well, whether he can keep that momentum going forward. I don't think Haas are going to be such a threat next year. I think they're still going to be struggling ultimately to finish anything other than last in the standings. But if anyone can do it, Nico Hülkenberg can bring home the points. So yeah, congratulations Nico Hülkenberg. A great season overall. It's just a shame it was in a frustrating car. And then last but by no means least, I would like to give a mention to Alexander Albon, of course, in the Williams. Carried the Williams squad. We've talked about Hülkenberg carrying Haas. We've talked about Tsunoda carrying AlphaTauri. Well, Alex Albon certainly carried Williams with 27 points scored against the 28 overall that the team scored. Sargent picking up one lucky point at US Grand Prix due to Charles Leclerc and, of course, Lewis Hamilton getting disqualified. So without that, it'd have been a full clean sweep for Alex Albon and scoring multiple points against his teammates, none. Alex Albon this season has been absolutely fantastic, it must be said. He has delivered the goods really well. He's been able to be on pace to make different strategies work out well as well, of course. He has been unlucky at times. He's added the odd mistake here and there. Track limits has been Alex's main stumbling block this season. Picking up multiple penalties at the likes of Brazil and the US Grand Prix, getting a final track limits warning at Abu Dhabi, just the last race of the season. So, he really does push the boundaries, and more often than not, he goes over them more than he should be doing. If he can iron that out for next year, he's got more chance of points, of course, because, anything without a penalty is better than a race with penalties. And yeah, for me personally, Alex Albon has been fantastic to witness and to watch. Like I said, just a few mistakes here and there, which means he doesn't quite get into the top 5. I can't place these 4 drivers that I'm talking about now as in like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, etc. Because I think they've all done really well. But yeah, I just thought it was well worth a mention to Alex Albon for single-handedly carrying Williams to that P7 in the Constructors, doing a fantastic job throughout the most part of the season, and yeah, overall being a great guy. So yeah, a fantastic effort to him. So then guys, those were my top 5 drivers of the 2023 Formula 1 season, with quite a few honourable mentions as well. It must be said, this season, as much as it has been poor driving standards at times, and we'll come to them at the moment, for the most part those poor driving standards all involved the same drivers week in, week out. So yeah, we're going to come to them, of course, in the next video, so look out for that one. But yeah, overall, my top 5 drivers. A lot of praise here for a lot of guys that have done really well this season. Sometimes in inferior equipment, sometimes in the best car on the grid, but then we're able to just go the extra mile and dominate like Max Verstappen. It really has been a season to behold, I would say. It's not been a season to prosper and embrace like the 2021 season was. Nail-biting stuff throughout most of the seasons, throughout most of the weekends. Here, of course, though, it's been one of sheer dominance by Max Verstappen, but there's been a lot of solid performances up and down the field as well that needed noting. So congratulations to everyone that I've mentioned in this video, even the ones that didn't quite make it inside the top 5. They've all had superb seasons and they know it. So yeah, congratulations to everyone. Singing the praises here, but I'll be ranting and shouting and moaning in the next one. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming very soon. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, much love.